husband, one who had become moody and angry all the time. I was seeing what they meant in that first channeling session in 1988 when they, my spirit guides, told me to leave Steve behind. But for the time being, we were doing the best we could with a new life and a new business. Today, I will be reading to you from chapter 21 of Guided. My advisors mastermind my next moves. So sit back and relax as I tell the story about how, despite the dysfunction, my spirit guides took me on one journey after another that led me to a greater understanding of myself. And by the way, my books are all available on Amazon. Guided is available in paperback Kindle and audiobook format. Okay. All right, chapter 21. My advisors mastermind my next moves. Having put the channeling project on hold, I took my next step in real estate. As a home builder, an architectural designer, and a subcontractor, I was completing the circle by getting my real estate license. Once I had my license, I began by researching the area to become market savvy before considering myself ready to work with a client. I found that the real estate brokers were an ego-driven, money-hungry, demanding bunch. Like the channeling partners I had experienced, these people also lusted for fame and fortune. It seemed that everyone expected more faster. My broker was just about to fire me because I wouldn't sell anything until I knew the market. I noted in my own businesses, I had had the luxury of doing what I loved, which allowed me to always work from the highest integrity. I knew to be successful, I needed to be working pretty much all of the time. Working all the time was not what others around me in real estate wanted. They wanted fast results and some glorified outcome. They became jealous of me and tried to undermine me on every front. I just kept walking through it, ignoring them. Tip: just because you dread doing something doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, or for at least a while. Consider that you weren't quite done, and this is the final step to completing what you needed to learn to do. Hang in there. It's only you who can't see the entire picture yet. To me, getting back into real estate felt like I was backing up, when what was really happening was that this time I was just going along for the ride. Meanwhile, life for Cindy back in California was taking on life-changing turns. Cindy married her boyfriend at the start of 1991. Steve and I went to the wedding and found that many of the guests had already formed an opinion of me, and it wasn't a good one. I had never met these people before, so apparently Cindy had been telling her new family members negative things about me to win them over. To top it off, my mom was enjoying how people shared her disappointing view of me. While I took a number of photos at the wedding, somehow none of them came out. No unhappy Kodak moments for me. See how it works? It's amazing, you guys. Cindy got pregnant on her honeymoon. In early October, she called to let me know she was in labor, so I flew out to Sacramento to be with her. But it was a false alarm. She finally went into labor 2 weeks later, and I could not afford to fly back out. Of course, my not being there validated all her lousy mom stories she had been telling about me. I later discovered that that was all part of a web of manipulation and drama that she would use later. There went that there went that squandered acting career in favor of a life of self-destructive lies and manipulation. Cindy and her husband were divorced a year after the baby was born. During and after Cindy's pregnancy, Steve and I had been struggling financially. I finally became fed up with it and decided to take action. It had been 3 years since we had left the Sacramento area and continued paying on a mountain of debt we brought with us from the California building project. I looked our financial situation square in the eye. We had paid off everyone except for the banks and the interest gouging investors. I told Steve I was going to see an attorney about filing bankruptcy, and he freaked out. To me, it was just business. Not doing it kept us frozen in time, and I was being guided to act on this right now. My guides told me that this was the right time to do it. Despite Steve's fear, I went to an attorney and got an objective assessment of our situation. His verdict: we were definitely a candidate for bankruptcy. Just before filing, I found a house in the heart of Sedona that the owner would finance. I showed it to Steve, and again, he fought me. He wanted to live in a nicer property and just keep renting. At that time, Steve's mom wanted to give us her car. I asked her to sell it and send us the money that she got for it so we could use it as a down payment on the property. See how things come together? See how they fall into place? This is guidance, you guys. She agreed. We bought the property and we were able to close on it before the bankruptcy was filed, which was important, okay? Everything was falling into place. However, starting over meant sacrifices. I was more than willing to make them, but I had to drag Steve along like a boulder on my back. Little did I know the momentum for building, little did I know the momentum was building for our next endeavor. Buying this property would be critical to that happening. Just weeks after closing on the house, Steve, his mom, and I went to Sacramento for Christmas to meet Cindy and her new baby. Steve's mom had never had grandchildren, which was really too bad because she wanted them and she would have made a terrific grandmother. I loved the fact that she might experience this through me. Unfortunately, my mother was there and ruined the whole thing. She was rude and sarcastic to my mother-in-law, which was very hurtful to this lovely woman. Seeing her behavior just made me love my mother-in-law even more. After that episode in California, I told my mother-in-law I was adopting her as my real mom. When we got back to Sedona, I started working on the bankruptcy in earnest. I filed on April Fool's Day of 1992. To put it all in perspective, Steve was so upset about it that he confided in his mother about what I had done, blaming it all on me. To his surprise, his mother told him that his grandfather, the grandfather he had idolized his entire life, had filed for bankruptcy not once, but twice, when it was a shameful thing to do. She commended me for taking charge and putting this behind us. Steve finally stopped struggling with it. Awareness. Hard decisions that must be made may distress those around you. They make it harder to move forward. If you find your spouse pulling against you, you may come to realize that you are no longer a fit. If the situation causes conflict, conflict does not resolve itself, like them raising the bar, okay? it is likely that eventually your relationship will fail. Steve continued to build up his computer repair business as I was beginning to sell property. Every month I did better than the month before because I really knew the market. I also understand I also understood and disclosed to the buyer the truth about how well or poorly a property was constructed because I had the background in it. I showed them how they could change or fix the property to suit them while producing maximum resale value. The added value I provided was how I grew my business. I also continued my architectural design practice. Steve, on the other hand, was struggling with his computer repair business because customers were hard to please. One day, Steve and I were standing outside on the driveway area of our property next to our cars, talking with our friend, Jackie, and her son. Out of the blue, I said, "Watch this." I walked down into the apple orchard of the property as a spinning whirlwind appeared next to me on my right side. It was like walking a dog. It moved along with me. It turned around when I did, and it stopped and started walking again when I did. Only after my spinning companion and I were at the far end of the property, and I turned around and looked up at Steve and Jackie, did I realize what had just happened. That's when I recalled what I said to them. Watch this. I was completely in the moment with my spinning companion. It continued to walk with me as I walked back, like it didn't want to leave me. As I got closer to them, my spinning companion dissipated into thin air. Similar to what happened when I took that photograph in December of 1994, and they showed up and I took their photograph and they dissipated. Very similar. They all asked me how I did that. I told them I didn't know. Just like I didn't know why they showed up that day and let me take their photograph. You won't know it while you're in it, you guys, okay? That doesn't mean it's not true. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. It was years later that by chance, I ran into Jackie and she asked me to do that thing again when I was walking with my spinning companion. I laughed and told her I didn't do that. It was just there. She thought it was a magic trick. Is that the funniest? Awareness. Think about the times you have caught yourself in the moment. It's in that moment that you find yourself to be unlimited, and that's when anything is possible. The key is to not interrupt that moment by questioning it or having to explain it. That's really important. Don't expect everything to make sense to you in the moment that it happened. In the summer of 1993, my mom visited us from California. By the way, that's the only time she ever came out. I took her to the Grand Canyon and through the Indian reservations and trading posts that she always dreamed of seeing. I was surprised at her low energy. My mom was 62 years old at that time. She had a hard time getting in and out of my Toyota 4Runner. Even so, I think she enjoyed herself. From the time she arrived, true to form, she was very judgmental about the property we had purchased. Before she left, she took lots of pictures of our less than opulent living conditions. Years later, Cindy told me that she showed the photos to anyone who would listen, using them to show how I had failed in life. I wasn't surprised and just continued to look past her need to wish the worst for me. Tip: never let people like my mother pull you down. They are disconnected from their guidance. They are also in a lot of pain all the time. All of it is self-created by their own negativity. Hopefully, at some point, they will recognize that something is missing and they will get it right. Around this same time, I had a dream where I saw hundreds of volcanoes erupting off the western coastline of the US. Then I was instantly transported to Japan and saw even more volcanoes erupting off their shoreline. Then I was back on the west coast of the US and saw big earthquakes shearing off the coastal mountain ranges. Thousands of volcanoes were boiling under the water off the coastline. And then came more earthquakes. Next, I was back in Japan and I saw it implode. It was completely gone. When I have dreams like this, my sense is that although they seem out of context, they may be prophetic of things to come. Despite my mother's evaluation of my life, I was actually doing very well in real estate. By 1994, I had gotten my broker's license, and by the spring, I had opened my own real estate office. In one of my channeling sessions, just before I opened the real estate office, my guides told me that real success would not come from real estate, from opening this brokerage. It would be from something that had to do with information downloads. Here we go again. Information downloads that would be viewed on what looked like little TV screens. I didn't know what this could be at the time, and I was really disappointed to hear it because I had put so much work into opening the real estate office. And there you go again. They tell you things that you won't understand at the time. You'll feel disappointed when they're really to your highest and best good. You're about to hear what happens next. I opened the real estate office anyway, which is what I should have done, and it was the right thing to do. Steve's friend, Al, had just moved out to Sedona from California and came to work at my brokerage as an associate broker. It starts to come together, you guys. This is real interesting. I was again off and running. Tip: just because you don't understand the meaning of your guide's messages doesn't mean you should start second guessing yourself. Expect to be confused at times, but don't let it scare you. A couple of months after I opened my brokerage, Steve came to me and said he could no longer do computer repair. He was really tired of ungrateful clients, and I could see that he was really suffering from it. He told me he wanted to sell the business, but didn't know what to do next. I told him to sell it, take some time off to recover so he could decide. So that's what he did. The Comdex show, a trade show for the computer industry, was scheduled for November 1994 in Las Vegas. Steve said he wanted to go. I couldn't go with him because of the demands of the real estate business, but I told him to go without me. When he came back, he was very excited. He told me that the internet was taking off. I instantly got a bolt of energy that ran all through me. The feeling was so strong that I told him to research what it would take to build the infrastructure, operate it, and launch it. We had $50,000 saved up, and I was making about $10,000 a month in real estate. Within a few weeks, Steve had completed the research. When he realized the magnitude of what it would take to get it moving, he choked. He told me he didn't want to work that hard. Whoa. I couldn't believe what he said. I told him this had a short window of opportunity and we were going to go for it. Within a month, almost all of the $50,000 was spent, but we had modems, servers, software, computers, and phone connections. We didn't have a lot of capital left, but we could pull it off. Interestingly, the property we had bought in 1992, just 2 years before, turned out to be perfectly located for this endeavor. This was the same property he resisted us buying 2 years before because it wasn't as nice as the rental property that we were living in. It was close to the telephone company's central office, which was important back then because modems using phone lines was the way the internet service providers connected their customers to the web. Also, our property was not hampered by zoning laws. So there was no trouble having hundreds of phone lines housed there. The property was a critical part of what it took to launch it. It was perfect synchronicity, and thanks to my guides, it was all working out perfectly. Tip. This is a perfect example of how taking timely action is critical. Hesitating would have squandered the opportunity. Once again, moments of opportunity always have a shelf life. The year 1994 was also a year when the most unusual thing happened. One of my spirit guide angels materialized, allowing me to take their photograph. In this photograph, you can see her emerging right out of the TV. It is clearly a female form, very tall and beautiful, and her presence and energy consumed the room. You can see right through the beautiful translucent white, blue, yellow, and orange colors that define her form. This photograph of my spirit guide angel is what they really look like. They are energy that use our energy to project themselves into our dimension so we can see them. I happen to have my Nikon SLR 35 millimeter camera in hand, and there she appeared in full glory, allowing me to take the photograph that would become the front cover of this book 20 years later. The same year I took this photograph of my spirit guide angel in 1994, I had a dream. They showed me that I would write a book about relationships that would become a bestseller. This book would turn out to be about my relationship with my guides, so you could learn how to discover your own. They also said this would become one of many books I would author, and they would all be easy to write, which is exactly what happened. I have written 5 books so far. This was one of those dreams that woke me right up out of a dead sleep. I was really meant to remember this one. They were showing me my life. They were showing me my future beyond where everything was going at that time. We had started what would be what would be Northern Arizona's first internet service provider in December of 1994. And it was up and running by February of 1995. On March 6th of 1995, we went live. That was exactly 1 year to the day after I opened my brokerage. The technical staff worked out of our property where the infrastructure was housed, and Al and I handled all the on-site customer service from my real estate office. See how that did play out, how it was meant to be? It just wasn't real estate that provided the financial. We put up a second sign for the internet and hosting businesses right under the real estate sign. I was now aware that the internet was what they had described to me a year earlier, just before I opened my real estate office. That's when my guides told me real financial success would not come from opening this real estate brokerage, but something else that had to do with information downloads. The things that looked like TVs, of course, were computer monitors. Amazing how everything made perfect sense in hindsight. You can't see it when you're in it. But then that's the brilliant way your guides work for you. Lesson. Everything that led up to the opening of the ISP was already in motion years before. What made it possible was acting on their guidance every time it showed up without hesitation, without second guessing it. It's not enough to take action in only one place and miss it in others. To experience real success in your life, you have to be on all the time, accessible. So you are accessible to your guides. Are you ready to get to know them? Our internet business took off. It was a success from day one. Even though it was doing well, our expenses were greater than our income in the beginning. Steve came to me saying a local stockbroker had offered us $15,000 for a 50% interest in the company. I said, that wasn't going to happen. I sternly told Steve we would make it without investors. I was making enough money in real estate to get us through the lean times. 6 months later, the internet and hosting businesses were breaking even and still growing fast. Based on that, we were finally able to hire help. Our first employee was the administrator. He was a kid, still in high school, and a rare find. The entire business hinged on this kid. Imagine. Steve knew how to put this all together, but he was still scared. Tip: once you make a decision, it's best to leave your fears behind. Releasing fears into your endeavor will hinder its potential for success. Interestingly, Steve found that the internet customers were even more demanding than he had encountered with his computer repair business. They didn't understand that there would be glitches from time to time. They expected perfection. They screamed and yelled and acted unreasonably when the system went down, reflecting back to Steve the way he had been behaving over the past several years. See how it works? This had all the signs of karma pointing back at him. Many of our customers were using the internet to trade their own stock accounts. If the internet went down, they would call in screaming at our support team. Everyone tried hard to keep the systems up. Our alarms would sound the moment there was a glitch of any kind, no matter what time of the day or night. We would get right on it. In those early days, it was the wild, wild west for the internet. I was consistently attending litigation classes to be among the first to find out what case law might affect us and how to mitigate it. Meanwhile, Steve was doing a great job putting the staff together, and I was really good at managing them. About a year after we went live, we relocated the public office to a larger space. It housed all the support staff and front counter people. Steve didn't like the public office. He continued to work out of our remote property. From the beginning, I had told Steve we were building these businesses to sell them. In planning that, we now needed to move the phone lines and modems to a commercial location. This location had to be close to the public office and the phone company's central office, and had to be secure. That was a big order. By 1996, things were going smoothly. Steve and I knew that the technology was moving toward high speed. The internet boom was white hot. We had hit it just right, but that would only be a good thing if we had a carefully planned exit strategy. This time, I was not going to ride the wave too close to the shore as I had done when I strategically cashed out of real estate in the late 1970s. The business was perfectly positioned, well-oiled and seasoned. It was time to find a buyer. We had to be under the radar, though, because knowing we were looking to sell would have negatively affected our goodwill that we had established with our customers, as well as our staff. It would be tricky, but I felt I was ahead of the curve this time. I also felt the technology crash coming. My guides warned me that it would be a big one. Awareness. Your guides expect you to hone your skills as you learn. They are there for you, but you should use your experience to make better decisions the second time around. We bought a small patio home and moved into it in the summer of 1996. Steve wanted to buy a big house instead, but I told him I didn't want to be the one left. Now, there you go. Why did I say that, right? It slips out. The one left to have to fix and clean it. He tolerated the new place, but he never liked it. Moving to a new home was not the only change for me in 1996. For whatever reason, when I was talking to people, including real estate clients, the subject of dreams started coming up. When I mentioned I helped people understand the meaning of their dreams, my listeners became very interested. These people loved this special time I spent with them, and they began to learn to understand their dreams on their own. They also became more skillful at remembering them. These same people turned into channeled reading clients once they understood that they had guides who were always there for them, if only they were open to it. I showed them that these guides came through their dreams all the time, and I trained them on how to recognize them. Many of these clients pressed me to write a book. There's that book again. You guys, the guidance is coming through all the time. It's coming through from other people. It's coming through from everywhere. Okay, you happen to watch something or do something, it's always there, all right? If you're not aware, if you're not conscious, you'll miss it. And it only makes your life harder. It's not supposed to be hard. Awareness. The reminders never stop. Well, here we go. They will continue to send you hints and nudges. That's divine. That's your guides. Like a repetitive dream, they intend to get your attention so you will take action. That's why me writing this book kept coming up. Based on what I saw going on, I secured the internet domain name dreamhelper.com and essentially set up shop. My little side hustle, something that you love to do. Do that for yourselves. In the summer of 1996, Osaka TV contacted us to participate in a 2-week internet tour throughout Japan. There's Japan again. They also invited some of the largest internet cafe owners in Los Angeles and the founder of Earthlink. Our mission was to teach the Japanese to think like entrepreneurs. Each company put presentations together. Steve and I negotiated with the sponsors to bring Cindy along as an educational experience for her, and they agreed. We went on this tour in November of 1996, and the moment we landed, vertigo hit me. Like the dream I had in 1993, I felt how unstable the landmass was, but I was the only one who did. The vertigo I experienced lasted the entire time I was there, which made me feel sick to my stomach all the time and kept me from eating much. The Japanese people were very sweet, but they could not grasp the concept of working for themselves. They actually looked down on people who were not part of a large company. However, they were very interested in the channeling and dream work I did and learning about their guides. They were so intrigued by what I was showing them, they would not leave me alone. They loved it. Unfortunately, both Steve and Cindy behaved like ugly Americans and were disrespectful of their culture. They seemed unwilling to learn from the experience. They were criticizing and demanding. I distanced myself from both of them as much as I could. From the very beginning, Steve was sick with a fever and stomach pains. That had been a reoccurring problem since we met, but it increased in intensity and frequency over time. His doctors could not figure out the reason for it, and he was sicker than ever during that trip to Japan. Steve and Cindy's behavior made the trip very hard on me. I finally stopped covering up for them so people saw their appalling behavior. Even the tour organizer was having regrets about inviting us. The trip was a turning point for me. I decided to never take Cindy on another trip again. And from that moment on, I was focused on getting out of my marriage. It was history repeating itself. Lesson. There comes a point when you're ready to face reality. You just get tired of trying to fix, change, or cover up for other people. The operative word here is tired. When you get this tired and finally stop trying to control everything, you become much more accessible to your guides, and things begin to work again. You need to be aware of the fact that your guides only know how to tell you the truth, and that may not be comfortable for you from time to time. All right, that was a long chapter. Guided on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook, and I read the book. Next week, you guys. All right. Next Saturday, October. What is next Saturday, Ray? I have the wrong.
Is it 10? Today's the 3rd.
Oh, look at the calendar to make sure. I wrote down the wrong date here. 10th. Okay. Next Saturday, October 10th at 1 p.m., I will read to you from chapter 22 of Guided, The Consequences of Financial Freedom. After the trip to Japan, my total concentration was staying on course. I knew it could be challenging, but I had to follow through on everything my guides had directed me to do, like handle the business, the marriage, and make personal changes that were long overdue. Until then, you have help. You are never alone and always being guided.